You're now live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another evening with our Jamaica Diaspora Legal Support Sector and Immigration Task Force. My name is Terry Ann Campbell, and I will be the moderator for this discussion. Joining me are our two lovely panelists, Michelle Fanger Esquire and Avagay Yu. They're both attorneys practicing in Florida, and they have some very informative and interesting and engaging information to impart to you about child support, custody, and divorce. Now, I want to do a brief introduction of our panelists, starting with our chair, attorney Michelle T. Fanger. She's a practicing attorney for some 8 years, and she covers areas ranging from taxation to immigration and family law. Michelle is a licensed practitioner of the Florida Bar. She's also co-founder of Jamaicans United, and she sits on various boards throughout Florida, namely the Voluntary Bar Liaison Committee and the Jacksonville Bar Association, and also the Family Law section of the Florida Bar. Next is attorney Avagay Yu, who is also an expert in the area of family law, practicing some 16 years. She also is an experienced criminal lawyer, and she practices in real estate as well. Ava is also the co-chair of the Broward County Bar Association's Family Law section and sits on the executive board of the TJ Riddick Bar Association. So without further ado, I want to welcome you to our task force meeting, and I'm going to hand it over to our panelists. Michelle?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. 1 second, I'm having a little issue. Today, it's an honor to be here to speak to you about questions that I've encountered in regards to child support. And I will be addressing those questions. Hopefully, through my presentation, I will provide answers to questions many might have. Some information you might not have questions, but they are good information to have in the event that you will be going through child support. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up my PowerPoints. 1 second. You know, technology, and I'm an old woman. So, okay. So today's topic is child support. A lot of people have been wondering why child support is a major topic to discuss, because everybody should be aware that if you have a child, mother and father is responsible for that child. But to be honest, a lot of people do not know that child support is in fact important. It's a responsibility and a duty. And a lot of people say, but I love my child, I buy them a shoe, I take them to the movie, so that should be enough. But that's not enough. And as we know, as the saying goes, love just is not enough. So what is child support? Although a lot of us know that, I'm sorry, I moved ahead a little. Back a little. First time doing PowerPoint. Okay, so child support is a court-ordered obligation of financial support for children. And this is for people who do not recognize that they are required. It is their duty. If you create a child, it is your duty to maintain that child. So the child support is a responsibility of both parents, whether you're married, because you know people are married, they separate. And you might say, oh, I'm still married, so do I need to pay support? Or you're in the household and you say, I don't have to. One party should be responsible. They don't care if you're single or divorced. You have an obligation. And usually the court will step in if a party refuses to abide or do their obligation to their child. A child support is something that cannot be waived. So you cannot say, for instance, okay, just agree with me. If I give you, say, a new Benz, that should be enough. I shouldn't have to pay child support. You can't waive it for that. So, also, what expenses does child support cover? It's like, because I come across a lot of people who have said to me that, you know what, for instance,
Oh, Michelle?
yes.
Did we lose you?
Are you hearing me?
No, yes.
Okay, I think we lost you. We're hearing you now. We're hearing you now.
Okay. My internet is a little choppy. So hopefully I can get through this before, because a lot of good information. Okay. So a lot of people might say, why should I pay child support? Because the spouse or my significant other, the mother of the child, the father, has a great job, lives in a great home. Why should I have to pay child support? One thing you have to understand is the child support is not for you. It's not why the child support is for the child. So what does the child support cover? The child support covers food and clothing. So you have to understand, if the child is living with one particular parent, they have to do grocery shopping. They have to take the child out for eating. Sometimes schools, they have to provide meals, and they have to go shopping. Because as you know, children grow, they eat a lot. So you have to pay for that. So a portion of that money goes into providing food and clothing. So if you're just providing $50, say for instance, every 2 months, or even $500 every 3 months, that really is not enough. Because if you look at a child, a growing child, and what they eat, what they go through, it's a lot of money. Also, it's to cover educational expenses, such as tuition, uniform, books, supplies, and activities. Also, it is to cover medical costs, which are out-of-pocket costs. And that, you know, like usually when you go to the doctor or hospital, you have to pay out of pocket for some expenses. So you have to also cover that. It also includes hobbies, activities, and entertainment for the child. And this is, the thing is that even though you have to pay this, you have to be in some form of agreement with the parent. For instance.
Oh, Michelle, I think we lost you once again.
Oh, are you hearing me now?
Yes. So I don't think we heard the last thing you said after the costs.
Okay, what cost? Medical costs or hobbies, activities, and entertainment. Did you hear that portion?
We didn't hear the hobbies.
Okay, so hobbies include entertainment activities for the child that, you know, to make the child wholesome, whether it's summer camps or swimming lessons and movies. I try to move quickly so I don't miss out a lot. How long does a parent have to pay child support? I'm a Florida practicing attorney, so I'm kind of paying specifically until the child graduates.
Michelle, you're cutting out again. Sorry. Maybe you need to just come closer to your mic.
Okay, are you hearing me now?
Yes, I think when you say
okay, my internet
closer, it doesn't cut out. So
okay, all right.
Sorry, you're gonna have to stay
That's
like
fine. It's my internet. Wow, what a time for the internet to be out. But yeah, in Florida, they look at the age of the child. So usually if they're in high school and 18, they look at what age they graduate. So if they're going to be 19, it will extend until they graduate. In some states, it's longer. Some states allow it to to go up to 21 if the child is in college. But if the child has a disability, it usually goes on for the life of the child. Also, it will end if the child is emancipated, or they got married, or they joined the military. What is retroactive child support? Okay, oftentimes what happens in that scenario is if like the mother and father reside together, then the father moves out of the household and the child is still remaining with the mother. What can happen is that for a few years, the mother might not ask for child support, but eventually she might, or the father might say, you know what, I need to go get some support. They go to the court, file their documents, and they're getting child support for the current year they're in. But what the court can do is look back and say, they will look at how long you have been outside of the household and try to calculate child support based on that period. So, but in Florida, it only goes back to 24 months. Before 1988, it could go back as far as when the child was, you know, like if it's 5 years, 10 years, but now they are a little bit lenient. They just do, it cannot exceed 24 months. Okay, while doing my presentation, I did go through some of these common questions I have come across where people have said, like, if the child lives with a parent and the parent has gotten married to someone else or has a partner, why should I pay child support? As I've stated earlier, the child support is not for the parent, it is for the child. And also, sorry, you know,
We lost you again, Michelle.
okay, I think I'm done for my presentation. Over to you, Ava.
Thanks, Michelle. So good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Ava Hugh. I am going to be talking a little bit about how child support is determined. And that's, you know, usually a huge issue for many people because they want to know exactly how much they're going to pay and exactly why it is that they have to pay that particular amount. So what the state of Florida has done is it's set up what they call child support guidelines. So they add the incomes of each party. So whatever the mother's net income is, they add that to whatever the father's net income is. And then there's a schedule of amounts depending on how many children the parties share. And then that gives a number that the state of Florida believes to be the amount that should care for a child for 1 month when the parents make this particular amount of money. So making a determination as to exactly what each party's income is becomes very, very important. So when you're determining income, you have to, you know, figure out what the other parties and what your bonuses are. Those things come into play. Overtime comes into play. If you are a business owner, or if you're, you know, getting income from any sort of partnership outside of your regular income, that also counts. If you're getting any additional income from maybe an income producing property, that counts as well. So, you know, when you're involved in a circumstance that involves child support, it's imperative that you speak to an attorney who knows exactly what they're doing and is experienced in this area of the law, so that you can ensure that you're getting those incomes correct, because that, you know, pretty much dictates everything. If somebody's retired and they're getting money from a retirement account, or if they're getting a pension, that still counts as income. So those are some of the things that people don't generally realize. If you're getting Social Security benefits, if you're getting spousal support from you know, your ex-husband or whatever the case may be, that also counts as income. So like I said, what the state of Florida does is once that net income is determined, minus any deductions, if a party pays child support for other children or whatever they pay for taxes, whether they be federal taxes, local taxes, state income taxes, health insurance payments, mandatory union dues, things like that are deductions that are able to be taken. So once those incomes are determined, then it spits out a number based on the amount of children that you have and the incomes that you make that is supposed to care for your child for 1 month. The other things that come into play with respect to determining child support include time sharing. So depending on how much time each parent has with the children, that's going to make an impact on how child support is determined. So if one parent has no timeshare with the children and the other parent has all the timeshare, then chances are, you know, that person who has more time with the children is going to get more child support, or is going to get a higher number because the other parent isn't exercising any timeshare. So generally what most people try to do is make it so that, you know, they have equal time sharing with the children so that that child support number can be more reasonable. So with respect to childcare costs, Michelle spoke a little bit about that earlier. Childcare costs, uncovered medical expenses, health insurance. The calculation for child support also takes those things into account. So if one parent is paying for the after school care, that is calculated into the child support calculation. If one parent is responsible for paying the insurance, health insurance for the children, that's also taken into account when that child support number is calculated. And the same goes for uncovered medical expenses. So all of those things, you know, play a part in how child support is calculated. So I say all that to say, you know, and to remind everyone that it's not a simple process, and it's always a good practice to make sure that you get yourself an attorney who knows this area of the law and is able to guide you through preparing the child support guidelines worksheet that needs to be prepared and needs to be filed with the court before a final judgment will be entered in any child support case. So make sure that you consider that if you're in that circumstance. Michelle, I know you're going to talk a little bit about payment of child support and enforcing child support as well.
Yes. Can you guys hear me clearly? Okay. Okay, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. Before I do that, let me share a screen. Hopefully, it does not give out on me. Okay, so in regards to child support, once there's an order being made, you have to make payments. So the payments can be direct payments to the party, which some parties agree and will say, that's fine. I make the payment and they trust you to make that payment. In some cases, you could do an income withholding order or a state disbursement unit where the people are saying, usually what will happen is that the state could step in and then you could make payments that way. If you and the party, you know, you're not sure the party will make those payments, that's the best route to go, to do it directly withdrawn from their account. Oftentimes, when I do my agreements for child support, usually I do something that talks about life insurance, I'm sorry. So life insurance is a guarantee to pay child support to the child in the event that you pass on. So it's just a guarantee that the child will still get some form of payment. So I usually put that in. A lot of attorneys do that. So that's another way of securing payment for child support. And also usually in divorce proceedings, the spouse usually asks for that also. Okay, so a lot of people, although there is a child support order in place, although they're required to make the payments, they can say, I am not making the payments. I don't feel like I should make the payments. So what will have to happen is that the state will have to step in, or you could go to the court to get enforcement. You could go to the court if you have a court order as the parent and go to the court and says, file a document with the court. It's called a motion to contempt. This is saying to the court, I want you to force that party to make their payment. So what the court will do is enter an order requiring them to make the payment. If they don't make that payment, there's repercussions. Repercussion can be prison time. They can require them to make the immediate payment. Another thing that could happen for failure to make that payment is that if it goes to the state, what the state can do is garnish your wages. So if they find your employer or know where you work, they can go to that employer and say, you know what, Joe owes $500 a month. I don't know how you're gonna take this payment. It could be bi-weekly or however, but at the end of the month, we need to get this payment. So the parent gets the payment on the first of the month. Oftentimes, you will see what people do is that when there's an order, they will quit their job and say, okay, I'm not gonna work. Or what they'll do is reduce their hours. But you can't fool everybody, because the court can look into it and say, you know what? You used to make $100,000 last year. Once this order went in, you're down to $30,000. You know what? We know you have the potential to make money. And what are the circumstances why? You're not ill or anything. We're going to require you to make that payment. So you're going to have to figure it out.
Michelle, sorry, one quick second. I forgot one thing, and I think it's kind of ties into what you're talking about right now. So,
okay.
Sorry about that, Michelle. So what has to happen in all child support cases is that the parties are required to file financial affidavits, and they have to exchange certain information, financial information that's required by the courts. So you have to tell the court how much you make every month. You have to tell the court, you know, all the extra income that we discussed previously. You have to explain, you know, what all of your expenses are for the month. So you have to tell the court all the bank accounts you have, any assets you have. You know, you have to disclose essentially all of your financial information so that the court can have that, as well as the backup documentation to ensure that they're getting an accurate income for you. Because like Michelle said, if you refuse to do that, then what are they going to do? They're going to go back to your tax returns and they're going to find a way to figure out how much income should be what they call imputed to you. All right. So sorry, Michelle, I just wanted to make sure I put that.
That's fine. That's good information. Okay. All right. So for punishment, another thing that they could do, if, as we said about taxes, if you do file taxes and you fail to pay child support, what they'll do is they'll go to the IRS and say, you know what? Joe owes me money. So before you give Joe anything, I want my cut first. So what they're going to do is take that money and give it to the state that will disperse it to the parent that needs that money. Another thing with child support is that if you fail to pay your child support, they can revoke your passport if you're a citizen, or they could deny a passport application. But they do have a limit. If it's 2,500, they will allow it. But if it's over that 2,500, well, 2,500 and above, they will revoke your passport. Also, they'll suspend your license. They also put liens on your properties and vehicles to recover that money. So you can't get away from them. And even if the child ages out, you're still responsible for those child support. So if the child is 40 and they find you and you say, oh, they're older now, so I could get back to a normal life, you know, my job, my whatever, they will find you and they'll take that money and send it to that child who will live a fabulous life with that money. Another thing is that I think I've mentioned that what can happen too is that they could do have a criminal case against you for failure to pay the child support. Because if the judge or, the court say, you know what, I know you could make that payment, you're refusing to make that payment, I've done contempt against you, still refuse to make that payment, you know what, this is a criminal issue. And what will happen is that they will lock you up, but they have a limit, is that it cannot be over 180 days. So I know a lot of people say, but how can they do that if I'm locked up? How am I going to work and pay? You should have thought about that before you refuse to pay, because it's your responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility. And another thing people don't understand, like they'll say, I've had issues where the mother will say, but I never filed a case. Then I'll say to the mother, but did you go get assistance, such as, food stamps, housing? They'll say yes. Okay, the thing is that the government is going to give you that money. They're going to say, we don't want the child to starve. We want them to have a home, so we're going to give you the money. But you know what? Somebody has to pay me back. So you have a social for that person, you have a last address or a job, we'll track them down. And they'll go wherever they have to go to recover that money. And then what they'll do is that they have, each state have a Department of Revenue that actually goes out and, go after these cases, claims, to recover those money. And ignoring a case for child support does not make it go away. What they're going to use is whatever information they have. And sometimes that information will make it appear as if you do have a lot of money. You might end up paying more than you can actually afford. So I always say respond, to whatever case. And also one thing I always say, if you are making any payment for a child and there is no order and you are making payments, keep a record. Do it by either a cashier's check, a check, never by cash. Because at least you need to keep track, because what the court will do is give you credit if you are paying and there is, like if you have to pay retroactive child support, they'll give you credit for whatever payment you have made. Another important thing I know that we have a lot of parents or people on here that have a parent in Jamaica, parent here, that you need child support. There is an agreement between Jamaica and the US and some other countries, some states within the US, where you can, if you file for child support in Jamaica and the parent lives in like Florida, I think New Jersey, Maryland, England, some parts of Canada, and you have an order from Jamaica, you can get that order enforced here to collect that child support. A lot of people are not aware of that. You can do that. Also, if you are here, if the child resides in Jamaica and the parent is here, the father or mother, and you want child support, you could go to that local court where that parent resides and file a petition for child support. And what will happen is, once that order is made, it is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that actually works to try to get the money, those payments, the order enforced to get that money to that child. So you can't run to Jamaica and say, I'm not going to pay child support. If that parent needs that support for that child, they can go ahead and pursue getting that payment. I think that's all I have to say on the topic. But remember, love is all good and dandy, but love is never enough, because you can't take love to the store. You can't take love to school. And child support is for the child, for the best interest of the child. Ava, back to you.
Thanks, Michelle. So we talked about, how child support gets determined, and it's based on whatever the party's incomes are at the time that order is entered. However, obviously, sometimes this doesn't remain the same. Sometimes somebody gets, a windfall where they get a better job, or somebody wins the lottery, or sometimes somebody loses their job. So if there is a change in either party's income that would change the child support amount, by at least $50, you're entitled in Florida to a modification of that child support. So at that point, a modification action can be filed, a petition for modification, and then each party will have to produce their financial affidavit, another financial affidavit, as well as the financial disclosures that are required by mandatory disclosure. And some of those documents include your tax returns for the past 3 years, your pay stubs for the last 3 months before your financial affidavit is filed, the deeds to any homes you may own, any applications for loans, your bank statements for the last 3 months for any checking accounts. If you have any savings accounts, those statements need to be produced for the last 12 months. If you have stocks and bonds, you have to produce those statements as well. You also have to produce your credit card statements and things of that nature. So if there is a change in income, the opportunity is there to either go to the courts and seek more child support, or if you're the party who has lost a job, you know, it's incumbent upon you, if you don't want to be responsible to pay amounts that you can no longer afford to pay, to petition the court to reduce that child support amount so that it is, you know, commensurate with what it is that you are earning at that time. So the court will recalculate and modify that child support. Another reason why child support often gets modified is because one party decides that they're not going to exercise the timeshare that they previously were ordered to have. So if you're supposed to see your child for the summer and you decide that you don't want to see your child for the summer anymore, and you stop doing that, or if you're supposed to get them every weekend and you decide that you don't want to do that anymore, the other parent can file a petition with the court to modify the time sharing. And if that time sharing gets modified, then guess what's going to happen? That time sharing is a part of the calculation for child support. So if that time sharing isn't the same as what it used to be, then the court will go back in and modify that time, that child support based on whatever the new timeshare is found to be. So, you know, there's, like Michelle said, they're going to make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to do with respect to spending time with your child. And if you're not doing that, they're going to make sure that the other parent is compensated for, you know, having to do more financially for the child because they are spending more time with that child. So, you know, in either case, it behooves you to make sure that you keep up to date with respect to what you're earning and whether that's in line with the child support that you've been ordered to pay. So the process for that, as I mentioned before, is to file a petition for modification. And it, you know, a lot of times I see people try to do these things on their own and they really don't know exactly what it is that they need to do. And then they end up, you know, putting themselves in more of a bind than they would have been. Because why? Because they don't know which deductions they're allowed to take. They don't know exactly what counts as income and what doesn't count as income. So those are some of the things that, you know, can make a huge difference in the amount that you're required to pay. And once you fill out that financial affidavit, which is your signed, sworn statement of what it is that you earn and what it is that you have, those are the numbers that the court is going to go by. And, you know, once you file that affidavit, if you end up having to file another affidavit subsequently, be prepared that the lawyer on the other side is going to ask you, you know, why did you change this? What's the reasoning? And you got to have a good reason for that. Otherwise, the court isn't going to believe what you're saying, and that child support is going to be ordered in favor of the other party. So, you know, just make sure that if you have any questions, you seek out someone who knows, and generally that's an attorney who practices in this particular area. So I don't know if there are any questions in the chat yet, Michelle or Terry.
Okay, Someone asked, I think it's Veronique, she asked a very important question. Can a child support order impact your immigration status?
I think, Michelle, you were talking about a little about that.
Yeah, in regards to child support, I know that in regards to getting if a passport, for instance, then it will impact you. I've had instances where people have stated that they have traveled and they have encountered issues with it coming up in the system when they're trying to re-enter the United States in regards to their child support. So it can impact you, and it is best to resolve those issues, because what can happen is that not only with immigration, in other instances, what they can do is also report outstanding child support to credit bureaus. So that will also impact you. But in regards to immigration, what I've seen is just that in regards to their passport, they're gonna revoke or deny. And I've had instances where people have stated with where they have outstanding child support and they have had issues re-entering the United States.
Yeah, I've had circumstances as well where, you know, people are applying for their citizenship and that becomes an issue because essentially it's an issue of moral turpitude where, you know, you have an obligation to your child that you're not fulfilling. So that can certainly become an issue if somebody's applying for naturalization. So pay your child support.
Yeah, it's very important. And I haven't seen another one, but I know someone asked in regards to, I've always had this question come up a few times. I'm not sure if other questions will come in, but while we have the time, in regards to divorce. Like I've had people contacting me from outside of the US stating that they're not sure if they're divorced. They haven't seen their spouse, but they're not sure if they're divorced. Or what I'll do is usually I do a search. I'll ask them if they're in Florida, because I practice here in Florida. And then Florida, I'll ask, do you remember the last county they live in? And I'll do a search, and sometimes it does pop up that they're divorced. The next question they'll ask is, how is it possible for me to get a divorce that I didn't get any notification or anything? But here in Florida, they make it quite simple in that the requirement is that you live in the state for at least 6 months prior to filing an application or petition for a divorce. So if a person travels here and they're here for 6 months and establish that they have resided here for 6 months, that's all they need to apply. File the petition. Once they have filed the petition, what will happen is that they're waiting for you to get served. So they'll serve you. They'll serve you at the last known address. So if your address is in Jamaica, they could say, we tried to serve her. They get bad notification that the person wasn't served. The court does not know the address of people. So whatever address they provide to the court, that's the address the court is going to, acknowledge. So you could say you attempted to serve that person and the person did not respond. So the next step would be for you to do a publication with a newspaper that is in the area that the person lives and that they'll potentially see, stating that there's a petition pending. And oftentimes people don't really read newspaper anymore, like usually on the internet. So you might not see it. So once you get back that information that it was published, you didn't respond, then what the court will do is proceed with the case. Oftentimes they do a default. Default is where the individual does respond, the then does not respond, and then the court will just move forward. But in Florida, what they will not do, if you do this process that way, if there are children involved or property, judges now will not make a decision in regards to child support, time sharing, child custody, or properties. Because what they're looking at is if they reopen, appeal the decision, then their judgment will come into be an issue. So they will not make decisions in regards to those aspects, but they'll go ahead and grant the divorce. So this is how people go ahead and, do divorce. And a lot of people always ask, like, my spouse disappear and now he's married. That's how it's done. Any questions?
You're on mute, Terry. There she is. Uh-oh.
Are you hearing?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. No further questions at this moment.
Okay. All right, since there are no further question, like Ava and I practice for Florida. So most of the information, although general, is mostly Florida specific. But within our organization, the JD-TAN, Legal Support Sector and Immigration Task Force, we have attorneys that are located in various states and regions of the world Caribbean. So if you have specific questions, if you're encountering any issues in regards to child support in any specific areas, you could definitely reach out to our organization. You could find us on Facebook at Jamaica Diaspora. I'm sorry, Jamaica Diaspora, Legal Support Sector and Immigration Task Force are on Facebook, or you could go to JD-TAN, jdtan.org, and you could send us a message. What I usually do is I link individuals to attorneys in that region, whatever region that you might have an issue, and that attorney will be best able to guide you and assist you.
You know, I think another issue that sometimes happens, Michelle, you spoke a little bit about people having to reside in the state of Florida for 6 months prior to filing either for a divorce or for child support or whatever, whichever one. I've had a circumstance in my practice where one of the parties to a divorce was living in the United States for 6 months. Then the wife came. Wife wasn't living here for the 6 months. Wife and children weren't living here for the 6 months. So guess what happened? Husband was expecting that he was going to be able to keep them here when he filed that divorce. But because he didn't wait the requisite 6 months, the wife was able then to move back to Jamaica with the children, because the courts here didn't have any jurisdiction over the children at that time. So that's, you know, that's another really, really important thing for people to remember when you're in those circumstances, that you have to meet that 6 month requirement, or else the court's not going to have jurisdiction over your case. And another thing with regard to divorces is that the same financial disclosures are required. So you do have to still file a financial affidavit and disclose everything, whether or not it was obtained during the marriage. So just, you know, be aware of that. Even if your assets are in another country, even if your assets are in Jamaica, you still have to disclose them. And the courts here will still issue subpoenas to Jamaica to get those records, so that the court will know exactly what it is that you have, what the value of everything is, and have the ability at that point to then distribute everything equitably, which generally in Florida means 50-50.
Yeah, and another thing that I've seen come up is what you mentioned, the relocation of children in Florida. Usually Florida look at the 6 month rule of where the child lives. So if the child's lived here for the past 6 months, and say for instance, as obviously you decided to just go to another state because you have an issue with the other party, the parent, what Florida will do, because if it's under 6 months, Florida will have the right and they will ask you to come back to the state. Where I've seen it happen a million times, especially during divorce, where one spouse decides to take it on themselves to just leave while the case is pending, or before the case is filed, they'll leave, like they know they're gonna file, but what they do is that they'll go to another state, not meeting the 6 month requirement, and will tell the other party, go ahead and file. And when the party files, they think they're in the clear because they're in another state. no, Florida's going to tell you to come back, and then they'll file whatever necessary contempt against you, whether kidnapping. And if you already have an order where the child is at a parent, with a parent, or reside with a parent, if you do want to move that child to another state, you have to go to the courts to ask for permission. You can leave.
Yeah.
And it would be best.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was about to say, you have to file a petition for relocation with the courts. And, you know, generally what happens when one party is permitted to relocate is that the court will enter a long distance parenting plan. And, you know, that also results in a change in the child support because the timeshare changes. So,
yeah. That's true. And also, it's not that easy to get the relocation because the court doesn't say, okay, you feel like moving, but that's enough. Yeah. They look at what's in the best interest of the child. They look at, you know, the education, what, you know, the school district. Is it a better place for the child? They look at the house and they look at several factors before they grant you, you know, that order to relocate. So you can't just on a whim say, I'm relocating. And you can, but the thing that most people don't understand is that outside of the marriage where you have to get permission, if you're not married and the child has been out of the state for 6 months, then they could do it. But also you have to remember that if you have a child, you're not married, and you're giving permission for the parent to go to another state, you have to have proper documentation stating that you're granting them like permission to go, because you know, they might stay there taking a child because for whatever reason. So you have to protect yourself, always protect yourself. I always tell people, like, you have to, even though things might be going smoothly, always look at the what if and always protect yourself. So anything you're doing, just ensure you have a notation, whether it's an email sent with the details of whatever agreement you have sent. And even in regards to modification, sometimes both of you could agree to a modification where you're saying I'm paying, but the person will go to court and say, oh, you're not doing what the court said, but you and the person have a side agreement. The court usually does not acknowledge them, but if it's an agreed on and the court could see that by some documentation, they will allow it and do modification. So everything, just always ensure that you protect yourself and always keep track of everything. Same thing with child support. If you're paying child support, but there is no order, have a record of it. You might say, oh, I trust a person, give them cash. If you give them cash, send a message after, a text, email. Remember, I gave you $500. On this day, this is for it. So you have a record. So you can never tell. So always protect yourself for the what if.
You know, another issue that I've encountered a lot too, Michelle, is when child support is ordered outside of a paternity action. So a party is paying child support, but no timeshare has been ordered. So in circumstances like that, generally it's the dads who are paying child support, and then the mom, you know, there's never been a timeshare order. So mom is dictating when dad is going to be able to see the children. Don't get me wrong, sometimes this can go the other way too, but in my practice, that's generally how I've seen it. What the party who is paying and not having the ability to see the child can do is file a petition for paternity. That petition for paternity is what essentially gives dad his rights to the timeshare. Okay, so that way at least you know that there's a court order saying I get to see my child every Monday and Tuesday and every other weekend. And, you know, the child support will obviously be based on that, but that's the way you can go about ensuring that you will have timeshare with your child, and that there are rules and regulations set out in a formal parenting plan that's filed with the court and that's ordered by the court with a final judgment so that it's enforceable. So if mom, you know, decides, okay, I don't want you to see him this week, you have a court order in place that's enforceable, and you can file a motion to enforce or a motion for contempt against that other party so that you can see your child. So there are, you know, sometimes I think people get so discouraged because they don't understand the system and they don't, you know, really know how everything works. But that's when you reach out, you know, to an attorney. I give free consultations all the time, and I make considerations for people depending on what their income is, because I do believe in what I do for for my career, in that I try to make sure that, you know, these children are provided for and that they have two parents who are involved in their lives.
Wow, such great information. I have maybe a final question for you ladies. How does a criminal conviction affect child support? Meaning that if you're criminally convicted, does anything change in terms of your expectation to pay child support?
You still have to pay your child support.
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
So you have to find a job in prison. They'll make the modification, but you're still required to make your payments.
Yes.
And what can happen is that if you're locked up, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so even if you're convicted, find a prison job or something to make your payment. But what they'll do, they might modify it if, you know, depending on the extended time frame you're in there, or, you know, like what they'll do. I know in instances where the state will step in to provide assistance, but once you get out, they, you know, get a job, they will try to recover all that money.
And I think, you know, you raise a good point in that sometimes when people are convicted felons, they think that, or returning citizens, as we call them now, we, you know, are fearful that their status is going to affect their timeshare and things like that. And, you know, generally, I haven't seen where that, unless it's certain types of crimes that they've been convicted of, you know, where it's like sex cases or things like that, or extremely violent cases. But generally, felony convictions don't preclude people from being good parents. So, you know, you're still, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to do with respect to caring for your child and having an appropriate place for them to live and to spend time with you, you know, that generally doesn't affect timeshare.
Okay, thank you. And I know I said that was a final question, but there was one more question that came in, and then we'll. I'm sorry, Ava. This question speaks a little bit to what Michelle was talking about earlier, about what if the child's father lives in another country other than the US? Are you able to file child support?
Yes, you can. Are you hearing me? Yes. I don't know if you got cut out, but yes, you can. You can file for child support. I know for Jamaica, you can file if the party is in, as I said, Maryland, New Jersey, Florida. If the parent is in Jamaica and you got an order, you could enforce it here for that parent living here. But if the parent is here with the children and the parent is back home, is that the question? If they're outside of the country? Yes. Or whatever country, okay. You can file a petition for child support in the county or where the children live. File that petition, and then you'll ask the home country of the other parent to enforce it. I know with Jamaica, it goes through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so you'll have to contact that country's department, you know, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And what I can tell you is that although Jamaica has only a few states, they're working to get where it's a federal law, and also working where other states, it's easier for people from Jamaica to get it done in other states. They're working on that.
Yeah, I think if one party is living in the United States and another party is living in a Hague Convention country, then you should be able to get it.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't know that. So they sit and complain that they're not getting, but you can. So just go ahead and do it. Because it's for the child, it's not for you. You know? Every little mickle make a muckle. That's the saying.
Yeah.
Wow, such great information. Well, we are wrapping up our panel. Ladies, do you have any last words before we sign off for the evening?
No, but just that, as I said, you could contact us at Jamaica Diaspora Legal Support Sector and Immigration Task Force on Facebook, or you could go on jd10.org and send us a message, and we'll respond in a timely manner. If it's you're in a specific state, we can connect you to an attorney in that state who will be willing to assist and guide you.
My final word is probably what my first word was, in that it's, make sure that if you find yourself in a circumstance that involves child support or a divorce, that you seek out an attorney. Even if you just go consult with someone for free, just at least talk to someone who knows the laws of the particular area where you are and can give you some advice as to how you should proceed, because it's a nuanced area of the law, and there are a lot of different little things that the general public doesn't know that make a big difference in how, what we just talked about with respect to child support, equitable distribution of your assets and liabilities. Sometimes alimony comes into play, so these things that affect your finances and will affect your finances for a long period of time, especially if you have a young child, you want to make sure that you are seeking out a professional in that area.
Great. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard from the experts in the field. You can, as Michelle said, you can reach us at the JD10 Legal Task Force and Legal and Support and Legal Immigration Task Force on Facebook, or via the homepage of JD10. So on behalf of our panelists, Michelle and Ava, thank you for joining us this evening. And we are happy to stay tuned. We will inform you of our next presentation very soon. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you, JD10, for hosting this Facebook Live. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry Ann. Thanks, Michelle.
Bye. You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.